Hey guys, tonight we're going to slip back in time into a place where silk threads glisten like morning dew, and believe it or not, where cats hold a special job assignment that might just surprise you. Picture yourself standing in the middle of an ancient Chinese mulberry grove, the leaves rustling softly under the night breeze. You can almost smell the warm earth, the scent of dew-kissed leaves, and maybe even a faint whiff of cat fur because, yes, cats are about to get seriously involved in this story. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment below with your city and the time right now. I'd love to know who's drifting off with me tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wander through the ancient mulberry grove, a place where generations of farmers have tended delicate leaves under the watchful eye of both humans and, believe it or not, cats. The leaves crunch under your sandals as you make your way toward a small clearing where villagers gather, heads bent low over baskets filled with wriggling white caterpillars. You can almost hear their soft chewing, like tiny papery whispers. Here, in this dusty corner of history, silk is as precious as gold, and every single leaf is guarded like a treasure. But who's the silent, four-legged hero behind the scenes? You catch a glimpse of a tabby cat slinking along the edge of the field, its ears twitching at every rustle in the grass. Its job, believe it or not, is to protect these precious little creatures. You see, in the ancient Chinese silk industry, cats weren't just household companions or adorable lap warmers. They were on the front lines of pest control. Mice, those tiny yet voracious creatures, posed a constant threat to the silkworms. A single hungry mouse could decimate an entire batch of these fragile larvae in one night. That's why cats were recruited to patrol the mulberry groves and silk workshops like silent, furry sentinels. You watch as the cat weaves between baskets, occasionally pausing to sniff the air or chase an invisible target only it can sense. One old farmer gives it a small nod, as if they've made an unspoken pact. In that nod, you see centuries of tradition, a mutual understanding that this is more than just a petite, a guardian of the silk trade, a living alarm system that keeps the precious silk industry afloat. History books might breeze past this detail, but here on the ground you can feel its weight. Scholars still debate whether cats were first brought in for this purpose during the Han Dynasty or even earlier. But one thing's clear: their presence became an essential part of daily life for the silk farmers. As you move deeper into the grove, the moonlight filters through the leaves, creating a dappled pattern on the ground that looks like a woven silk tapestry. You can almost imagine yourself as one of those farmers, praying every night that the cat would do its job and keep the silkworms safe. Because in a world where a single thread could be worth a fortune, you'd want every silkworm accounted for. And so, in this gentle darkness, under the watchful eyes of ancient farmers and their feline protectors, you begin to sense the delicate balance that sustained an entire industry. Maybe it's just the night air, or maybe it's the timeless wisdom of people who knew that sometimes even the smallest creatures need a guardian. You slide past the baskets and deeper into the village, where the comforting hum of spinning wheels fills the night air. The rhythmic clack of looms rises and falls like a heartbeat, and you can almost feel the tension in the threads stretching between the wooden frames. Tonight, you're stepping into the heart of ancient Chinese textile production, where silk is more than just fabric. It's a symbol of wealth, power, and a touch of superstition. You find yourself in a small workshop, walls lined with shelves of spoolsome, dyed in rich indigos and earthy ochres, others left in their pure, shimmering white. A woman sits at a loom, her hands moving with practiced ease. Her fingers dance across the warp and weft, coaxing a silken river from the threads. Above her, a single oil lamp flickers, casting long shadows that stretch across the wooden beams. The air here is thick with the scent of hot oil and dye, tinged with the faint sweetness of mulberry leaves. You watch as she carefully inspects each thread for imperfections severing knot and tangle as a potential disaster for the finished fabric. The weight of her responsibility is heavy. Any mistake could mean a wasted batch, and silk isn't something you waste lightly. Just then, a small shape darts past your feet, a blur of fur and whiskers. It's that same tabby cat you saw earlier, and now it's here in the workshop, weaving its own silent path through the spools of silk. The woman barely looks up. She's used to its presence. To her, the cat is both a comfort and a necessity, a reminder that no matter how skilled her hands, nature's little saboteurs are always waiting in the shadows. It's not just the mice that threaten this precious industry. History tells us that insects like beetles and moths sometimes found their way into the dye pots or nibbled at the finished silk, ruining hours, sometimes days, of hard work. The cat, with its sharp eyes and even sharper claws, is the first line of defense against these intruders. Some scholars argue that the use of cats in textile workshops goes back even further than the silk trade itself. There's debate about whether ancient Chinese farmers first domesticated cats for agricultural pest control, or whether they simply noticed that these curious creatures had a knack for catching troublemakers. The truth is probably somewhere in between. History rarely offers simple answers after all. You step closer to the loom, watching the woman's hands as they guide the shuttle back and forth. The cat pauses at her feet, tail twitching, as if considering whether to chase an invisible foe. For a moment, you wonder what life must have been like for her, working long hours in a place where every thread carried the weight of her family's survival. And every night, trusting that a small, whiskered protector would keep the silk safe. Outside, the night wind stirs the leaves of the mulberry trees, sending a few dry ones skittering across the dirt floor. The lamp flame dances, casting a halo of gold across the workshop. You can't help but feel a strange comfort in this scene. A woman at her loom, a cat at her feet, both weaving their own kind of magic. You take a deep breath, letting the scent of oil and dye fill your lungs. Maybe it's the warmth of the lamp or the rhythm of the loom, but you find yourself drifting deeper into this moment. Here, in the heart of the ancient weaving house, every thread, every paw print tells a story. And tonight, you're part of it too. You step out of the weaving house and back into the cool night air, the gentle breeze carrying with it the earthy scent of mulberry leaves and the faint musky undertone of the village cats. You follow the tabby as it winds its way through the narrow alleys, its tail flicking like a tiny flag of authority. In this village, Cats aren't just wandering spirits. They're the silent enforcers of an unspoken code that binds humans, silkworms, and cats in an ancient alliance. As you walk, you begin to notice small wooden signs nailed to doorways. Simple carvings of cats, sometimes playful, sometimes fierce, with eyes that seem to follow you. These are more than decorations. They're symbols of trust. They tell every passerby that inside lives a guardian, a living lock on the door against the scuttling shadows of mice. You can't help but smile at the idea that in this village, cats have a job title. You pause at the edge of a mulberry grove, where a few farmers sit on low stools, baskets of leaves at their feet. One of them leans back, chewing on a reed stem, and nods toward the cat beside him. "That one's been on duty for 3 seasons now," he says, voice low and proud. "Earned his keep 10 times over." You can almost hear the pride in his voice, as if the cat were a family member. Here, cats are considered a sign of prosperity and protection. Some even believe that a cat's presence can ensure a healthy harvest of leaves and, by extension, a strong yield of silk. Superstition or not, these beliefs have woven themselves into the very fabric of daily life. Some villagers leave bowls of milk or scraps of meat outside their doors as offerings, small tributes to these whiskered sentinels. Of course, not every cat lives up to its title. History's dusty corners are filled with stories of lazy or inattentive cats that let mice slip by and wreak havoc on precious silkworms. One farmer chuckles as he recounts a tale of a particularly sluggish tabby who spent more time napping in the sun than chasing vermin. "He was the laziest mouser I've ever seen," he says, shaking his head. But the elders said even a lazy cat is better than none at all. Historians still debate when exactly cats took on this official role in the silk trade. Some suggest it began during the Han Dynasty, when silk production boomed and the threat from mice became too great to ignore. Others argue it's older still, rooted in the earliest days of sericulture itself. The academic bickering aside, what matters here in the village is simple. No cat, no silk. You trail your fingers over the bark of a mulberry tree, feeling the rough grooves and imagining the generations of farmers who stood, just like you, hoping their silkworms would survive the night. Above you, the moon peeks through a patchwork of leaves, casting silver coins of light on the ground. And somewhere in the branches, you hear the soft thump of a cat landing, ready to patrol its domain. There's something comforting in knowing that even in a world full of uncertainty, floods, droughts, or bandits, there was always a small four-legged guardian to rely on. A partner in the dance of survival, a silent ally in the moonlit hours. And tonight, you walk among them, a silent observer to their ancient vigil. You wander down a winding path that leads toward the heart of the Imperial city, a place where silk didn't just line the homes of farmers, but draped the shoulders of emperors and dignitaries alike. The air here smells different. A mix of perfumed oils, incense, and the faint metallic tang of palace walls. It's a place where luxury was born on the backs of countless farmers, and surprisingly, their feline companions. Ahead of you looms a grand wooden gate adorned with golden symbols of prosperity. Dragons, phoenixes, and look closer, a small cat nestled among them, paw raised in a gesture of silent watchfulness. You step through the gate and into a courtyard bustling with activity. Eunuchs and attendants dart between doorways, carrying trays laden with scrolls, silks, and baskets of mulberry leaves. Here in the Forbidden City, silk is the lifeblood of fashion and trade. Every robe, every sash, every delicate handkerchief carries with it a lineage of toil and devotion. But tonight, you're on the lookout for the real star of the show, the royal cat, or Imperial cat, a feline dignitary whose role goes far beyond catching mice. You slip into a shadowed corridor where an elderly official waits, his beard as white as moonlight. He smiles and beckons you closer. "Ah, you've come to see our special guardian," he says, voice low and conspiratorial. Even His Majesty knows the importance of a watchful cat. He gestures toward a small chamber guarded by two soldiers who look like they'd rather be anywhere else. Inside, you find a regal-looking tabby perched on a silk cushion, eyes half-lidded as though it's been waiting for centuries. A small plaque proclaims its status: Royal Cat, guarding Sangbozi, the Imperial cat protector of Mulberry and Silk. You let out a small laugh at the pomp of it all, but then, remembering the stakes, you sober up. After all, a single mouse in the wrong place could mean disaster for the Imperial silk stores and disaster for the Emperor's reputation. Historians still debate. When cats were first officially recognized by the Imperial court, some records suggest the Tang dynasty saw the earliest appointments of feline guardians, complete with ceremonial feeding schedules and even small embroidered capes. Others argue that it wasn't until the Song dynasty that the role of royal cat became formalized. Whatever the case, the fact that a cat could hold such an esteemed position says a lot about how seriously the empire took its silk. You watch the tabby stretch languidly, flicking its tail in the dim lamplight. An attendant kneels beside it, offering a small dish of milk imperial rations, no less. The cat sniffs, takes a sip, then returns to its half-sleep, ears flicking at every distant scuttle. It's easy to forget that even in the grandeur of the Forbidden City, some things remain universal. The need to protect what's valuable, the quiet trust between human and animal, and the simple fact that sometimes a cat is the best security system money can buy. You lean against the doorway, watching this furry sentinel do its Jobancient instincts and imperial politics intertwining in a single graceful tail flick. And for a brief moment, you realize that even emperors needed a little help keeping their precious silk safe from tiny teeth and hungry bellies. As you slip back into the narrow alleyways of the silk village, the night air feels cooler, carrying with it the distant scent of burning oil, lamps, and the hush of the sleeping world. But here, in the small courtyard of a silk-drying shed, the night is anything but quiet. The tabby cat you've been following sits perched on a wooden beam, eyes sharp and unblinking as it surveys its kingdom. Tonight, it's on the night shift job it's taken on, with a kind of solemnity that would make even a palace guard proud. You settle in a quiet corner, leaning against a stack of bamboo baskets, and watch the cat do its rounds. Every few steps, it pauses, ears swiveling like radar dishes at every creak of wood or whisper of leaves. You can almost hear it thinking, "Not on my watch." In the flickering lamplight, you notice how the silk workers rely on this nocturnal guardian. A few women doze on straw mats nearby, exhausted from hours of tending to the delicate cocoons. One of them stirs, eyes half open, and murmurs a half prayer for the cat's vigilance. The relationship between cat and human here is one of silent collaboration or contract. No pay, just a mutual understanding that the silk trade depends on the cat's alertness as much as on their own hard work. A sudden rustle sends a jolt through the quiet courtyard. The tabby freezes, every muscle tensed, eyes wide. You hold your breath as it stalks toward the sound, each step a masterclass in patience. It lunges swift as an arrow wand emerges from the shadows with a wriggling mouse dangling from its jaws. A collective sigh of relief seems to ripple through the room, even from the sleeping workers. Tonight's bounty is safe, thanks to this one small, determined predator. Some scholars argue that the nocturnal habits of cats made them indispensable to the silk trade. The night was the most vulnerable time for the silkworms when humans rested, but predators prowled. And so cats, with their keen night vision and hunter's instincts, became the perfect guardians of the night. There's even debate over whether cats were first domesticated precisely because of this night shift Rollia theory that, while romantic, still sparks lively debate in academic circles. You lean back, eyes heavy, and watch the cat settle in for a moment of rest. It curls its tail around itself like a living lock, eyes half closed, but ears still swiveling. There's something comforting about knowing that even when you sleep, someone, rather some small, furry someone stands, watch. Outside, the breeze rustles the leaves of the mulberry trees, carrying the faint scent of dew and silk. The cat shifts, as if sensing some new disturbance, and you can't help but marvel at the simple elegance of its task. Protect the threads of an empire, one tiny footfall at a time. And as your own eyelids grow heavy, you realize that the night shift of the ancient silk trade isn't so different from your own quiet watch here tonight, keeping the stories alive, thread by thread, whisper by whisper. You find yourself on a dusty road stretching westward from the village, where traders' wagons creak under the weight of silk bolts and exotic spices. The silk rode a lifeline of commerce that carried Chinese silk all the way to the Roman Empire and beyond. You feel the desert wind brushing your face, carrying with it stories of distant lands, spices you can't name, and unexpectedly cats. Yes, even here, amid the clatter of camel hooves and the creak of wagon wheels, cats find their place. You spot one perched on a crate, tail flicking idly as it surveys the chaos. Traders bustle past with baskets of mulberry leaves, bolts of raw silk, and boxes of fragile porcelain. But your eyes keep drifting back to the cat, its calm presence an odd anchor in the swirl of commerce. Merchants, you soon learn, never travel these roads without a small, whiskered companion. Some call them good luck charms. Others call them the cheapest pest control in history. You sidle closer to a trader with a beard as long as your arm and ask him why. He laughs, revealing a few missing teeth, and says, "Because the mice never sleep, and neither do the cats. At night, under a sky so vast it makes you feel like a single grain of sand, the campsites come alive with stories. Around flickering fires, you hear tales of cats that warned traders of bandits, of cats that curled up in blankets to keep travelers warm. and of one legendary tabby that chased a mouse right into a caravan leader's sandal, waking him just in time to escape a pack of raiders. Maybe that story's grown a few whiskers over the years, but out here, truth and legend blur like the shifting desert sands. Historians still puzzle over how cats became such an integral part of Silk Road caravans. Some say they were first carried west by Persian traders who prized their hunting skills. Others argue that Chinese merchants themselves recognized the value of a feline traveling companion and spread the tradition wherever they went. Either way, one thing's certain. These cats were more than pets. They were essential equipment. You watch a cat dart between wagons, eyes shining in the lamplight, chasing a shadow only it can see. It leaps gracefully onto a crate, where it surveys the campsite like a miniature emperor. One trader tosses it a scrap of dried meat, and it accepts with a dignified nod before settling in to groom its paws. There's something deeply comforting about this scene, traders trusting their cargo, their livelihoods, and their very lives to a small, furry protector. In a world where bandits lurk behind every dune and disease waits in every city, sometimes the difference between success and disaster rests on the flick of a tail and the flash of sharp eyes. You lean back against a wagon wheel, the smell of spices and sweat filling your nose, and listen to the traders' voices drifting on the wind. Here, on this ancient superhighway of commerce, you realize that cats weren't just guardians of silkworms back home. They were the silent allies that helped carry China's most precious treasure across continents. And maybe, just maybe, they carried a little piece of home for the travelers who missed the sound of night winds rustling through the mulberry trees. The night air is thick with the scent of mulberry leaves and oil lamps as you weave through the bustling village center. Tonight is special. It's the annual Sansanzir, the Silkworm Festivala celebration of all things silk. From the smallest cocoon to the grandest imperial robe. Lanterns sway overhead, their soft glow painting the cobblestone streets in hues of gold and crimson. The laughter of children mingles with the clatter of festival drums, and somewhere nearby, a flute plays a haunting tune that makes your skin tingle. You pause near a row of wooden stalls where farmers proudly display their harvests, baskets of freshly picked mulberry leaves, strings of white cocoons hanging like necklaces of hope. Silk weavers in bright robes demonstrate their craft, the shuttle of their looms flashing in the lamplight. But as you wander deeper into the festival, it's not just the humans who catch your eye. There, under a banner proclaiming Tan Shenmao, you spot a small shrine dedicated to the silkworm deity, and perched right beside it, a tabby cat with a ceremonial red ribbon tied neatly around its neck. You grin at the sight. Even here, in the middle of a festival meant to honor the silkworm, cats manage to claim the spotlight. A group of children giggle as they feed the tabby scraps of fish, and it accepts each offering with the regal air of a feline emperor. One of the elders leans over and tells you that the cat is considered a lucky charm, a guardian against ill omens and bad harvests. If the cat naps here, he says, eyes crinkling with mirth, the mulberry leaves will be green and the silkworms fat. Some historians argue that the tradition of cats at the Silkworm Festival is a relatively recent addition, a fusion of local superstition and the practical need to control mice in crowded festival spaces. Others believe it goes back centuries, rooted in the early days of silk farming when every villager understood that a single mouse could spell disaster for an entire year's yield. As with so many things in history, the academic world remains undecided, and maybe that's part of the charm. You follow the cat as it weaves between celebrants, tail held high like a royal scepter. It pauses near a vendor selling sweet rice cakes, shaped like tiny silkworms' delicate treats that melt on your tongue and leave a trail of honeyed sweetness. The vendor laughs as the cat sniffs at the treats, and she shoos it away gently, only to toss it a small piece a moment later. Even in the midst of celebration, this guardian is never off duty. A sudden cheer erupts from the main stage, where a troupe of performers spins in a dizzying dance, their costumes shimmering like spun moonlight. You feel the collective breath of the crowd, a shared moment of wonder that connects every person here, from the smallest child to the oldest villager. And at the edges of the celebration, the cats remain watchful, curious, always present. You pause, feeling the warmth of the festival seep into your bones. Under the glow of 1,000 lanterns, you understand that the cats are more than just protectors. They're part of the story, woven into every thread, every smile, every whispered prayer for a good harvest. And tonight, in this festival of silk and dreams, they remind you that history is made not just by emperors and generals, but by the smallest guardians who stand watch in the moonlight. You slip away from the festival's glow, lantern lights receding behind you like fading fireflies. A narrow alleyway leads you toward a quieter corner of the village, where time seems to move more slowly. Here, old tea houses lean against each other like sleepy cats themselves, their paper windows glowing faintly in the night. Inside one such tea house, you find a small group gathered around a low wooden table, their faces half lit by the glow of a single oil lamp. The scent of green tea mingles with the musty perfume of ancient books stacked precariously on nearby shelves. A man in a faded scholar's robe leans forward, eyes gleaming. He's holding court with a tale that seems to have everyone leaning in like moths drawn to a flame. You settle on a worn cushion, eager to hear the latest tale of feline fame. They call it the Tiger General, the man says, voice low and dramatic. A cat so fierce it once chased a thief across 3 rooftops before pinning him in a pile of rice sacks. The group erupts in laughter, the sound echoing off the wooden beams. Another man-face creased with lines of laughter chimes in with his own contribution. Ah, but I heard of the silk sage, a cat so clever it could sense when the silkworms were about to hatch and would guard them night and day. You grin. Clearly, in this village, every cat is a legend in its own right. Some cats even have nicknames: Shadow Hunter, Midnight Pouncer, and Emperor's Whiskers. These aren't just casual monikers, they're badges of honor, stories passed down from one generation to the next. Like family heirlooms, historians might scoff at such tales, labeling them superstition or mere village gossip. But you've learned by now that sometimes the lines between history and folklore blur like ink in water. Even scholars can't quite agree on how much of these stories is fact and how much is simply the human need to find meaning in the whisk of a tale or the glint of green eyes in the dark. A young boy beside you tugs at your sleeve. Did you hear about the cat that slept in the mulberry basket and the silkworms hatched all around it? They say the silk from that batch was the strongest ever woven. His eyes shine with wonder, and you can't help but smile at the imaja, small, dozing cat curled up like a guardian spirit, its dreams entwined with the future of silk itself. The old scholar leans back, stroking his beard thoughtfully. Some say the cats come from the gods, sent to teach us humility and vigilance. Others say they're just cats, doing what cats do. But either way, we owe them much. His voice softens. History isn't always about emperors and wars. Sometimes it's about small guardians in the shadows. You sip your tea, letting the warmth spread through you. The stories here are woven with laughter and wonder, each one a thread in the tapestry of village life. Outside, the moon hangs low over the rooftops, silver light painting the alleyways. Somewhere out there, a cat prowls, its shadow long and silent. And you realize that in this place, cats aren't just hunters, they're legends, living proof that sometimes the smallest creatures leave the deepest footprints. You leave the tea house behind, the laughter still echoing in your ears, and wander toward the edge of the village where old stone walls hold centuries of stories. Here, in the hush of night, you find something that catches your eye. A weathered shrine, its roof half collapsed, sheltering a small carved relief of a cat, its tail curling in an eternal question mark. Moonlight bathes the scene in silver, making the carving glow as if it holds a secret. Curiosity pulls you closer. You kneel down to trace the ancient lines of the carving, noticing the cat's wide eyes and intricate whiskers. Beside it, someone once etched a spiral that might have been a silkworm, or maybe just the artist's whimsy. Symbols like this pop up all over the village indoors, on pottery shards, even on the wooden beams of old weaving house seats. One, a quiet testament to the cats that watched over this place. Scholars have spent years debating what these feline symbols truly mean. Some argue they were simple charms to ward off mice and evil spirits, while others insist they're tied to deeper beliefs in fertility, protection, or even transformation. One famous historian once claimed that these cats were a sign of the divine feminine guardians of life and death itself. Another researcher rolled his eyes at that idea and declared them nothing more than good luck doodles. The debate, like a cat's tail, curls on with no clear answer. You stand and wander further, noticing a clay pot half buried in the ground. Its side is painted with a delicate brush scene of a cat crouched in the mulberry leaves, watching a plump silkworm dangle from a branch. The brush strokes are so precise you can almost feel the cat's breath, warm and steady. You imagine the artist bent over this pot, the tip of the brush trembling slightly, determined to honor the silent protector that kept the silkworms safe from scurrying thieves. It's easy to think of cats as just cat's soft fur, purring comfort, a living heat pack for chilly nights. But in this village, and in countless others across the ancient silk-producing regions of China, cats carried an entire culture on their whiskers. Every small shrine, every carved tile, every painted pot is a piece of that puzzle, each one a clue to the deep bond between humans and their feline companions. You pause beside a wooden post where a red paper charm is tacked, It flutters in the night breeze, its edges worn and frayed. Painted on it is yet another cathis one, with one paw raised and a small fish balanced delicately on its head. The artist's brush strokes are playful but precise, a testament to the care and respect these animals command even in simple festival decorations. Looking up at the moon, you can almost see the cats that once prowled these streets, their shadows merging with the darkness, their eyes glinting like tiny stars. The night holds its breath, as if listening for the soft pad of paws on old cobblestones. And in that moment, you understand that these symbols, no matter how mysterious, tell a story as real and tangible as any emperor's decree. So you press your palm against the worn stone of the shrine and silently thank the cats who once watched over these silkworms, these villages, and these people. Even if the true meaning of these symbols is lost to time, the quiet partnership they represent remains a reminder that sometimes even the smallest guardians leave the biggest marks on history. As you move beyond the quiet shrines and moonlit alleys, you find yourself drawn to a larger building that looks part temple, part bustling workshop. The air here is thick with the scent of incense and the tangy aroma of mulberry leaves, and in the flickering lamplight you see walls adorned with painted tapestries of silkworms, farmers, and done surprisingly cats. This is where the line between myth and daily life blurs completely. The temple of the silkworm god, a place where the spiritual guardians of the harvest are honored and where cats play a curious supporting role. You slip off your sandals and step inside, your feet brushing across cool stone floors smoothed by generations of worshippers. At the far end of the hall, a wooden statue of the silkworm god stands tall and serene, eyes cast downward in eternal contemplation. Offerings of fresh mulberry leaves and small silk bundles lie at its feet, tokens of gratitude from farmers and weavers alike. But what catches your eye is the small altar to the Sida-carved wooden cat, tail curled protectively around a cluster of cocoons. A few coins glint in the offering bowl beside it, alongside half-finished threads of silk, as if the worshippers couldn't decide whether to honor the god or the cat first. A priestess, her hair tied neatly under a silk scarf, notices you lingering by the cat's shrine. She approaches with a gentle smile. The cat and the silkworm god have always been partners in our craft, she explains. Without the cat, there would be no silkworms to protect, and without the silkworms, there would be no silk to weave. Her voice carries a warmth that makes you feel like you've stumbled into a family secret rather than a temple ritual. She leans closer, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Some say the cat was a gift from the gods, a reminder that even the smallest creature can hold great power. Others believe that cats were once the silkworm god's own messengers sent to keep the mice away. She chuckles softly, as if even she's not sure what to believe. Historians have long debated the origin of this curious partnership. Some claim it's purely symbolic, a convenient explanation for why cats became indispensable to the silk trade. Others suggest that local myths and agricultural practices merged naturally over centuries, creating a narrative where cats and gods shared the same protective role. Either way, the cat's presence in the temple is more than decoration. It's a living link to the village's heritage. You kneel by the altar, feeling the smooth grain of the wood under your fingertips. The carving is simple yet elegant. A cat with its head slightly tilted as if listening to the whispers of the worshippers. You imagine a farmer lighting incense here after a long day in the fields, hoping the cat's spirit will watch over his precious silkworms that night. Outside, the wind rattles the temple's wooden shutters, carrying with it the scent of rain and damp earth. You glance back at the cat shrine and feel a quiet sense of gratitude for the unseen guardians who've kept this ancient trade alive. In the flickering lamplight, you understand that faith, folklore, and practicality are sometimes threads of the same tapestry. And here, in the temple's hushed air, every purr, every paw print is woven into the fabric of history itself. You leave the temple with the faint smell of incense clinging to your sleeves, the image of that wooden cat guardian still lingering in your mind. But as you step back into the night air, a different scent greets you, something a little less sacred and a little more, well, let's just call it earthy. A small group of farmers huddles near a communal fire, voices low, as if sharing secrets too delicate for the festival crowds. Curiosity tugs at your sleeve, and you settle down on a rough wooden bench, the night breeze carrying snippets of conversation. "Did you hear about old Moe's tabby last season?" one farmer asks, a grin playing at the corners of his mouth. "Lazy thing slept through 3 mouse raids sate like an emperor, but didn't catch a single pest." A ripple of laughter circles the group, though it's tinged with a note of worry. Here's the thing about cats in the silk trade. They might be beloved guardians, but that doesn't mean every feline earns its keep. Some cats, like some people, you think with a grin, seem to be born with a taste for leisure rather than duty. One old woman shakes her head, her hair bound in a faded blue cloth. "We used to tie a little bell around its neck to remind it to stay awake," she says, eyes twinkling. "Didn't work, of course. That rascal would nap under the dye pots all afternoon." Despite the laughter, there's an unspoken seriousness beneath the humor. A single mouse, unwatched, unchallenged, could ruin a season's worth of silkworms in a single night. A sleepy cat might seem funny in the daylight, but come midnight, it could spell disaster. Some families even kept a record of a cat's performance, marking its kills in a small ledger alongside the silkworm yields. A cat that failed its duties too often might find itself unceremoniously traded to another householder, in some cases simply left to wander the alleys as a stray. Historians still argue about how formalized these feline reviews really were. Some believe it was just folklore passed around in idle gossip. Others insist that, especially in bigger silk-producing towns, these evaluations were taken quite seriously. Either way, the idea that a cat could earn or lose its place in a household adds a strange but endearing wrinkle to the history of silk production. Not every cat faced punishment, of course. Those who excelled keeping the mulberry leaves safe from mice and guarding the precious cocoons often received small honors. A red ribbon tied around the neck, a little dish of milk set out at dusk, or even a tiny shrine near the household's loom. You imagine a proud tabby sitting in the doorway, eyes half closed, tail flicking with satisfaction as the humans whisper praises and slide it an extra scrap of fish. And so, as you watch the firelight dance on the farmers' faces, you realize that the relationship between humans and cats was a delicate balance of trust and expectation. A partnership forged in the flickering shadows of the silk trade, where even the laziest mouser might still find itself remembered with a fondif, exasperated smile. You smile too, imagining those catsome heroes, some slackers, all of them part of the tapestry of life that wove itself around the silkworms and the humans who tended them. You leave the circle of farmers behind, the last of their laughter fading like the tail end of a song, and wander deeper into the village, where the night air grows cooler and the hush of sleeping houses settles in. The moon is high now, casting long shadows across the cobbled paths, painting the world in silver and black. At the edge of a mulberry grove, you pause. There, half hidden in the shadows, a familiar tabby cat lounges on a low stone wall, one paw dangling lazily, eyes half closed as if it's halfway between sleep and some feline dreamland. You step closer, and its tail flicks in greeting, but it makes no move to get up. Tonight, it seems, even the guardians are allowed a little time off. You can't help but smile. After all the stories of heroic cats and imperial guardians, it's comforting to see this small, whiskered sentinel just being, well, a cat. It stretches its back, lets out a luxurious yawn that shows every tiny tooth, and rolls onto its side like a spoiled prince. In the distance, a cicada sings its midnight song, and for a moment, the whole world feels as slow and sleepy as this tabby. You remember a tale you overheard in the tea house earlier, about how some cats were so at home in the silk workshops that they'd curl up among the baskets of mulberry leaves, snuggling next to the very creatures they were supposed to guard. One farmer claimed to have found his best mouser napping with silkworms crawling across its fur-like living jewelry. He'd laughed and said, well, maybe the silkworms liked the warmth too. Historians are still scratching their heads over how much of this is folklore and how much is fact. Some believe cats really did forge a quiet truce with their charges during the daylight hours, only to spring into action at night. Others think these stories are just the village's way of softening the harsh realities of pest control, a bedtime story for farmers who needed a reason to smile after a long day's work. Either way, there's something undeniably sweet about the idea of a cat and a silkworm sharing a nap. You imagine the warmth of the cat's belly, the slow rise and fall of its breath, and the tiny silkworms wiggling contentedly in their cozy leaf nests. Maybe, in that gentle hush of afternoon sun, even the fiercest hunter can be a friend. The tabby on the wall rolls over again, blinking at you sleepily as if to say, "You humans worry too much." Its tail curls around its body like a question mark, and it lets out a sigh so deep it makes you want to curl up next to it and forget the world outside. A few feet away, a lantern swings gently in the night breeze, casting shifting shadows across the wall. You lean against the stone, letting the night wrap around you like a blanket. In this village, even the most vigilant of guardians needs a little time to rest, and maybe, just maybe, that's the lesson the cats have been teaching humans all along. So you close your eyes for a moment, breathing in the soft scent of mulberry leaves and the earthy tang of ancient stone, and let yourself drift into that same half-sleep that the tabby seems to master so well. You rouse yourself from that half-sleep haze and wander toward a small wooden shack on the edge of the village. A faint glow leaks through the cracks in the walls, a flickering lamp illuminating a small cluttered space filled with dried herbs, clay pots, and yellowed scrolls. This is the domain of the village healer, a woman known as Auntie May, whose knowledge of both human ailments and curious folklore has made her a trusted if slightly eccentric figure in these parts. You duck under the low doorway and find her hunched over a worn wooden table, grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. She looks up, eyes crinkling at the corners, and waves you in with a grin. "Ah, the night owl wanders again," she teases. "Looking for stories or medicine tonight?" You smile, because the answer, of course, is both. Auntie May gestures to a shelf where bundles of dried herbs hang like sleeping bats. "See those?" she says, voice low and conspiratorial. "Some of these are for Silkworms' mulberry leaf poultices for when they get sick. But the real secret ingredient." She pauses dramatically and points to a small jar, its label faded and cracked. "Cat hair." You blink, half suspecting she's pulling your leg, but she nods solemnly. A few strands, carefully collected when the cat grooms itself, especially after a good hunt, can be steeped in wine or brewed into a tea. They say it drives away evil spirits and keeps the silk safe. She winks. Good for humans, too, if you believe the old tales. Some historians scoff at such remedies, dismissing them as superstition. Others argue that in an age when disease and pests could ruin a harvest, people clung to any solution they could find, no matter how odd it might seem to modern eyes. One scholar even suggested that cat hair, with its association with cleanliness and the cat's own pest-fighting skills, became a kind of symbolic medicinia talisman against the unseen dangers that threatened the silk trade. You lean closer, fascinated by the jumble of knowledge and folklore. Auntie May pulls a small scroll from a bamboo tube and carefully unrolls it. Faded ink sketches reveal a cat perched on a mulberry branch, its tail curled protectively around a cocoon. Below it, a note reads, "The guardian's whiskers keep the harvest pure." She sighs and shakes her head. "Some things even I can't explain," she murmurs. "But the people believe, and that makes it real enough." You imagine farmers gathering cat hair from their vigilant mousers, slipping it into sachets, or tucking it beneath the loom, whispering a quiet prayer that the guardian spirit would watch over their silk. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. But in a world where a single mouse could mean ruin, even the smallest ritual was worth the effort. Auntie May leans back, wiping her hands on her apron, and eyes you shrewdly. "You look like you could use a charm of your own," she says, laughter dancing in her voice. She plucks a single white cat hair from a small box and presses it into your palm. "For luck," she says, "and for sweet dreams." You close your hand around the hair, feeling its softness, and wonder how many generations have passed down this simple belief that a cat's spirit could bring protection, health, and maybe even a little peace in a world that never stops spinning. You leave Auntie May's little apothecary with a small grin, cat hair charm tucked safely in your pocket. The night has deepened. The village mostly asleep now, but the scent of mulberry leaves and wood smoke still hangs in the air. You follow a winding path to the edge of the village, where the road bends toward the river and the port beyond. There, you see a gathering of traders preparing their boats under the moonlight. Lanterns sway in the gentle night breeze, casting wobbly reflections on the water. Crates of silk and bales of leaves are being loaded onto small riverboats destined for ports unknown. And there, on the gangplanks and dock ropes, you spot them. Cats. Tabbies, calicos, and even a grizzled old black cat with a notched earthy slip between the crates and barrels, their tails flicking with an air of seasoned travelers. One tabby hops onto a crate of silk and perches like a captain surveying its ship. Another lounges on a coil of rope, eyes half-lidded in a look that says, "I've seen more of the world than you could ever dream of." You sidle closer to a group of sailors clustered around a fire, their voices hushed with the tiredness that only comes from long journeys. One of them notices your curiosity and laughs softly. "Ah, you spotted our ship cats," he says, voice rough but kind. "They've been with us since the first trip we made downriver, kept the mice out of the silk and the rats out of the rice." He scratches his beard thoughtfully. "Sometimes I think they're smarter than half my crew." Historians are still piecing together the role cats played on these ancient trade routes. Some argue that cats were first carried by Persian traders or Roman merchants and then became a fixture on Chinese trade boats. Others believe that Chinese silk traders themselves recognized early on that these little predators were the best insurance policy a cargo ship could have. Either way, their presence became indispensable own small part of the vast machinery that moved silk from China to the wider world. You watch one particularly scrappy kitten chase its own shadow across the dock, then pause to groom itself in the lamplight. There's something oddly comforting in this momentous reminder that even in the hustle of trade and the tangle of empires, small lives continue their own quiet stories. One sailor leans in, eyes twinkling. "They say some of these cats come back year after year, even if their owners don't. Always find their way home no matter what." He shrugs, as if even he doesn't know whether to believe it or not. Maybe they've got their own map of the world, one only they can read. You smile at the idea, secret feline highway of scents and stars, guiding these whiskered wanderers back to the villages that first taught them to guard the silkworms. And maybe, just maybe, they carry a little piece of home with them wherever they go. The river laps softly against the dock, a lullaby of water and wind. You close your eyes for a moment, breathing in the cool night air. It's a comfort to know that even on the farthest journey, these cats remain constant companions, silent protectors of both silk and dreams. You follow the river back toward the heart of the village, the night air now cool and damp, carrying with it the scent of dew-kissed leaves. The cats have faded into the darkness, some curled on rooftops, others nestled among baskets of mulberry leaves, their duty for the day done. A hush settles over the world, the kind of stillness that makes every sound, every creak of wood, every sigh of the wind feel like a secret shared just with you. As you walk, you find yourself drawn to the oldest part of the village place, where the air feels thicker with stories, where every cracked stone seems to remember 100 whispered prayers. There, beside a sagging fence covered in tangled vines, you spot an old man hunched on a small stool. He's feeding a cat from a chipped porcelain bowl, the lamplight catching the silver in his hair and the deep lines etched into his face. You pause, watching the quiet ritual. The cotta, dignified old tabby with a torn eariats, with slow, deliberate bites, tail flicking now and then, like a metronome. The old man looks up and smiles, his eyes twinkling. "Ah, you're the one who's been wandering, listening to stories," he says, his voice like worn silk. Did anyone tell you about the cat that still guards the silk at night? The one who waits in the darkness, just in case the mice come back? You shake your head, eager for one last tale before the night gives way to dawn. He nods, as if he's been waiting to share this one all evening. Long ago, he begins, they say the best cats were honored with a small bell, tied around their necks with red silk. When the bell rang at night, it meant the cat was on duty. The farmers slept easier, knowing their silkworms were safe. He pauses, eyes soft. But sometimes the bell would go silent. The cat would vanish into the shadows, no sound, no sin yet the mice never came near. Some say it was the cat's spirit that stayed behind, watching over the silk even after its whiskers had turned to dust. Historians still debate whether these spirit guardians were real or simply a way to explain the unexplainable, why some silkworm harvests thrived while others failed. Some argue it's just folklore. Others claim there's a deeper truth of belief, that loyalty and duty can linger long after the body is gone. You listen as the old man's voice grows softer, blending with the sounds of the night. The tabby finishes its meal and pads away into the darkness, leaving only the faint jingle of its collar behind. The old man sighs, gazing at the spot where the cat vanished. We owe them much, he whispers. Every bolt of silk, every festival, every story, it's all thanks to those little guardians. You smile, feeling the weight of his words settle in your chest. The night air feels warmer somehow, filled with the memory of countless catsome living, some long gone who watched over this village, this silk, and these dreams. You turn to leave, your steps slow and quiet on the cobblestones. The wind carries the distant murmur of the river and the soft rustle of leaves, as if the night itself is breathing a gentle lullaby. The world grows softer as you make your way home, each step lighter than the last, each breath tinged with the sweet scent of mulberry leaves and ancient stories. The night no longer feels quite so dark. It's as if the cats themselves, those whiskered guardians of silk and sleep, have left a trail of warmth in their wake. You close your eyes, imagining the flick of a tail, the quiet jingle of a tiny bell, the soft pad of paws on ancient cobblestones. In that hush, you feel the rhythm of history, a gentle thread weaving you into a tapestry of farmers, silkworms, and cats that stretches back to the first mulberry tree. So tonight, as the stars blink overhead, and the breeze carries with it the sighs of 1,000 forgotten stories, let yourself drift into dreams. Trust that somewhere in the shadows, a silent guardian keeps watch not just over the silk, but over your heart too.